Welcome to the last beer show. Are you ready?
I am ready to rumble.
There you go. Get your face right up on that microphone.
Check.
Check. Sibilous.
Pafreem. See the way it just rolls off your tongue? Pafreem. Pafreem, Belgian style blonde ale.
P capital F R-I-E-M. Pafreem.
Yeah,
Where are they?
They're in Oregon. I think Hood River, Oregon. And they're a new up-and-coming brewer up in that area.
Belgian style blonde ale.
Yep.
That's what we are enjoying right now.
Yep, we are.
What have you enjoyed in the last month since the last show?
Holy smokes. Well, we've had quite a few bottle shares here in the past couple of weeks. We've had some really crazy shares around here. We did a big
All the shares.
We did a big IPA. Share here a few days ago, where we did a lot of stuff from Brooklyn, New York, and Bearded Iris from Nashville, and just a bunch of IPAs, Trilliums and Tree Houses, and all the usual suspects that you expect.
Those are
to
the
see.
trendy ones.
Yeah, the trending, the New England IPAs, as they call them these days. And so we did a big IPA tasting this week, and then also on Sunday, I took part in probably the craziest Wales bottle share that I've ever been a part of, which included the number one ranked beer in the world, which is Toppling Goliath's Kentucky Brunch Brand Stout, as well as their Morning Delight and a bunch of others, including Three Floyds, Marshmallow Hangy, and Ronaldo, and 23-year-old Pappy. And
It's Wales City.
It was a lot of Lupepe from Cantillon. It was incredible. Thousands and thousands of dollars worth of beers we drank that evening. That was Sunday.
It's very uptown.
Very uptown funk. Yeah, it was good.
Uptown funk.
Yep. So, so we drank a lot of across the spectrum, both in super fresh IPAs. We had some, fresh IPAs from Creature Comforts. Their Duende released recently, which is pretty spectacular. We had their Tropicalissima, which is their the Tropicalia double IPA, and then Bearded Iris double home style and picture book. I was in Nashville last week for work, and I stopped into that brewery. Really cool brewery in Nashville, focused on IPAs mainly.
Mm-hmm. And it was good?
Oh, it's spectacular.
I heard they're doing good work.
They are doing really good work. Honestly, Nashville's come a long way in the craft beer world in the past couple of years. They've got several really good breweries there, including Southern Grist and Bearded Iris. They've got Fat Bottom. They've got Black Abbey. I mean, they're really they've come a long way in the past couple of years.
I think until recently, the only Tennessee brewery I could name was Blackberry Farms.
Blackberry Farms, yeah. Of course, Yazoo, which is a Nashville kind of. They've been around Nashville for a long time. They're pretty. It's pretty popular around that area still. It's kind of like Sweetwater. I think I kind of tend to think that Yazoo is Nashville's Sweetwater,
like a regional size.
Yeah, exactly. Very, very big in that area, but not really big to people that live in that area, which is odd.
Right.
Like Sweetwater is really, really big here, but it's not hugely popular to everyone that lives here because there's so many other beers.
Well, it's ubiquitous.
Yeah, it's ubiquitous.
They're the big player in, Georgia, the Southeast, really. They're far and away the biggest brewery.
Yeah.
But they're available in every grocery store. So
right, exactly.
You kind of take it for granted.
Yeah, I feel that way. As Yazoo's felt that way as well.
So consistent.
Yeah,
you know what you're getting into.
Yep.
Man, I got into a couple of surprises
Yeah, you were in Seattle.
recently. I was in Seattle, and I'm going to talk at length, not too much length,
Yeah.
about a lot of those beers that I ran into in some of those breweries, and a great time I had out there on a long weekend. I got into that McKellar, their Berliner Weiss, the Hello,
Oh yeah, I love that.
the Ickben Raspberry.
Yeah, Ickman Raspberry. Had
The
it on draft
raspberry
a couple
is
weeks ago.
so really, really, really good. It's a little like I know a lot of people complain that it's a little light, like the multi backbone is kind of fair, but I think that was part of the charm of it. You're like, man, it was crushable.
Yeah.
Totally crushable. It was delicious. You know what I get into? And I know some people are not really into, the Golden Monkey from Victory, but I got into the Sour Monkey.
Mm-hmm. Yep, I like sour.
It's
monkey.
good. It's really good.
Yep.
I know. Serpent Bite, this dry hopped sour from local favorites Orpheus
Mm-hmm.
is really, it was fantastic.
Yep.
A couple of other, more typical. I can't stop with Anderson Valley's GT Goza.
Yeah.
I cannot stop with it. It is like, it's got to be in the fridge now next to the emergency drinking beer from Wild Heaven and the Rapturous from Three Taverns.
Okay.
Like, it is. At first, I'm not sure I got it, but then I got into a couple more cans and I was like, now I cannot stop. It's like you fisting a bag of French fries.
Yeah.
And you're just going and going and going and going until they're gone.
Yep.
Because you just can't get enough. Skittles, whatever it is. You're like, got to keep, this can't stop. This can't stop.
I think that's the same way I feel about Westbrook's Key Lime Gosa.
I don't think I've had that one.
Yeah. I've got one.
I get into Dogfish Head's Sequential.
Okay.
Sequence Ale.
Yep. Heard of it.
Was it black lime and salt, and it was actually pretty tart. Like, that's definitely, it's supposed to be crushable, but it's so tart. Like, you're kind of like, slow down on this one, bro.
Yeah. Take it easy.
Take it easy.
Easy.
The back of your palate's kind of like tightening up here.
Easy boy.
Deschutes, that fresh squeezed IPA, was really good. I don't think I have in my mind that they're an IPA shop, but that was a really good IPA. And
I
of
love
course,
their board games.
And then we mentioned Blackberry Farms.
Yes.
Their farmhouse sales are just
They do a really good job of those saisons. They're kind of some people don't like them. They think they're inconsistent or they're kind of mediocre. But I'm a huge Blackberry Farms guy.
Well, I mean, it's not pure wild fermentation. They do a mixed fermentation, right?
Yep.
And I mean, anytime you inject a wild fermentation process, your batting average goes down.
Yeah, of course.
Now nature plays a part.
There's a ton of risk.
Yeah, a ton of risk. I saw a video on YouTube, as I tend to do once I've had a couple too many craft beers.
Yep.
Is sit in front of not nightly, but
put the kids to bed.
Yeah, and it's
daddy time.
Crush City, Daddy's Hour. Just Apple TV and YouTube, and I just start watching like beer shows and reviews and all kinds of nerdy stuff that we all have a few particular things we nerd out with. So there's a couple of videos on there from Austin favorites. Jester King, and I know you give an announcement later on that.
Yes,
but I so they did a really tasteful video on there about wild fermentation and their process. It was the first batch of spawn, and they made it around that.
Yeah, I love that video.
And they talked about the water and just the local wheat and leaving
capturing
it out
the
in
moment.
the field overnight, like leaving the wort in the field overnight to like capture like airborne yeasts and then letting that ferment for like months. And I was just like, oh man, that can go wrong. Yeah, that might go wrong at any point.
You can listen to that video over and over again. You'll hear him say, "We wanted to capture this moment in time." And you truly understood what he was talking about capturing something that could never be recreated. Because it's so wild, like you can never.
If you close your eyes, it's like the Bob Ross of beer.
Yeah. He's like a little bit here,
trees.
A little bit
Happy
here.
trees.
I put a little here.
Right.
Look at that cloud.
So anyway, Seattle. Let me fit that in here.
Yeah,
that was awesome. So my wife gifted me a birthday present of a flight to Seattle to visit an old friend who moved out there a couple years ago. I think we've mentioned it before. My buddy Paul Burton, who is an amazing illustrator and does some really good work to help do some fundraising for endangered species and stuff. Just real warm dude. He went out there a couple years ago, and I got a chance to go out there, like I said, and it was just a beer drinking weekend. So there was like this Scotch and beer festival. Turns out it was just like ABI's distributor. Like it was just nothing. It was.
Hey.
Your dog's upset, dude. So we get out there, and we're just crushing all these breweries. And he's in the Ballard neighborhood, so it was like Stoop, Fremont, Urban Family, Populux, Bad Jimmy's, which is really cool.
Yeah, I've been to Bad Jimmy's actually.
And they have this like
small brewery.
I love these like little breweries that are doing 1,000 barrels a year, right? And you just walk in. It's basically a garage, and you sit there, and they serve you like you're at a bar, but it's a brewery. So we don't get to enjoy that yet. I imagine that business model is going to open up this fall for us in Georgia. Yep. But it was really so amazing and so enjoyable. And I got into I will tell you, I got into two of the best pints I would say I've ever had.
Nice.
One, I will say, is the best draft pint I've ever had at a brewery. And it was at, drumroll please,
Fremont.
Urban Family.
I wanted it to be Fremont so bad.
Fremont, I got into a really amazing bottle of this
Dark Star,
the bourbon barrel aged Dark Star, oak barrel aged Dark Star.
My mouth is watering already.
I mean, off the shelf, it was like $25 at a restaurant. And I was like, that's actually a pretty good price for that. It's probably more in a bottle shop around town. So we crushed that.
$25 there.
That was awesome. It was great. It was really rich and woody and a little on the boozy side, but just so well made.
That reminds me, if any of you are ever in Seattle and you find yourself looking for a bottle shop and a super great IPA shop, don't miss Chuck's Hop Shop. Chuck's Hop Shop has 2 locations.
It's not a paid endorsement.
It's not a paid endorsement at all.
What are you doing? You're reading an ad.
But Chuck's Hop Shop is this really amazing bottle shop there in Seattle. And my wife and I went there a couple of years ago, and we walked in and we were looking at bottles. We were actually looking at Fremont bottles because they had a lot of the Dark Star, and they had a lot of they had a lot of those big stouts from them. And the owner, Chuck, came over and was just like, "Hey, can I help you guys find anything?" And I just said, "We're from Georgia. We're looking for some stuff that we can't get there." And he's like, "Oh, you're from Georgia?" And he goes,
"It's easy."
He goes, "Yeah, let's." He goes, "Do you like IPAs?" And I said, "Yeah." And the next thing I know, he had placed 20 different IPAs in front of me at a table and was just like, "Hey, let me show you around Portland and Seattle." And he literally took me through 20 different IPAs from the Portland and Seattle area. And honestly, I was blown away by it.
And then hailed you a cab.
Well, actually, what was really sad about that was that at that time, I still I hadn't gotten into my IPA phase.
You didn't like IPAs.
I didn't like IPAs.
It was new to you.
So I was like, this is the most amazing thing, but I don't like IPAs. But I drank every single one of them. I wish I could have gone back and enjoyed it. But anyway, the reason why I said that is because Chuck's has an amazing selection of Fremont stuff, but there are people there who were so ridiculously knowledgeable and friendly.
Yeah.
And they just had the most amazing, diverse bottle shop there that you should definitely check out if you're in the Seattle area. That was not a paid.
No, that was not a paid read. I would say that you can tell how legislation affects the beer culture in a city. Because the way that community has fragmented into like hyper localism.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure.
Right. And they're able to pour, they're able to self-distribute a certain number of kegs to local bars so you can kind of like cross-promote yourself. I think it just creates a lot of opportunity for them. I saw actually right before I came in, I was sitting in the car going through bunch of crap on my phone, and I saw that some of the breweries in this one neighborhood in the Ballard area where I was. Stoop, Rubens, Populux, and another one is like Red Envelope, I want to say. They actually did a collaboration beer that they're all serving. So they got together and they did a brew that just represents that neighborhood and the culture that sort of 4 or 5 block area brings to the table.
Yeah.
And I thought that was so cool. Like, it's the opposite of what like happens when you're hyper competitive.
Yeah,
in a hyper competitive space.
So to give you a little idea of like, if you've never been to Seattle, Seattle is a pretty widely spread out area, I would say.
Yeah, it's a broad city.
Yeah, it's a super broad city. But Ballard is actually across the river, and it's where most of the crab boats tie up. So if you've ever seen any of the deadliest catch boats,
I saw Cornelia Marie.
Yeah, the Cornelia Marie we saw there.
Yeah.
The Wizard. You can see most of those boats tied up down there in Ballard, and then they go up to Dutch Harbor whenever they're in season.
Because they've got that cool like lift entry area where they raise the water level up inside of the. Dude, your dog's going insane.
So Ballard is like it's a marina area where the crab boats are. So it's actually a totally different culture than what you would see in like West Side Seattle or Capitol Hill or some of these other places, because it literally is its kind of own area over there.
Yeah, like I said, my favorite in that space was the Urban Family, which is another really small one, just like Bad Jimmy's, about the same size. And it was one of the most incredible beers I've ever had, because they're doing some stuff with sours. It was like a mango raspberry sour, but it was like a soft, pillowy mouthfeel and a cloudy visual, kind of like a New England IPA.
Yep.
So it was just a real different contrast than anything else I've had. And I just sat there and savored it nice and slowly.
Yeah, I bet.
I was like, oh, don't want it to stop. And we sampled a couple others. They had like a key lime IPA and some other things. It's like big risks, like big, bold flavors and big risks that, you know, may or may not pay off with, you know, people showing up. But
yeah,
it was really awesome. Anyway, I had a great time. Another great place was the Outlander. And down in Tacoma, we went to this place called Engine House 9. It's a brewery, but half of the taps, like they have like 50 taps, half of them are other breweries from all over the place, which was really fun to see. It's fun to walk into a brewery and half the taps are not their beers.
Yeah, so
I was sampling all these other flavors, and they really had a lot of stuff from like Portland, Oregon, you know, which is, you know, only a couple hours away, I think. So it was like, we were like, okay, take it easy. Got to get back to Seattle at some point, but
yeah. Well, it's interesting that you say that, because Jester King also
they do that too.
They do that too, actually.
I saw that.
I looked at their draft list, and they sell a lot of different bottles from a lot of different breweries.
And a lot of them are funky too. Like, they really try to feature other wild or sour beers and things that are close to what their nature is.
Yeah.
So it's real collaborative, which I think is really, really amazing. So I'm going to use that to segue. And we're, you know, a couple of weeks late on the news here, but the Wicked Weed purchased by AB InBev.
As I drink from my Wicked Weed.
You have a Wicked Weed
my
glass,
Wicked Weed
which
tulip glass, which you guys can't see, but this is in memoriam of one of the best breweries in the world, really. One of the best sour breweries
Pour
in the world.
one out for your homies.
Yep. So cheers to the Wicked Weed folks who've achieved the greatness that they desired, I guess.
No, they're rich. You know, I don't fault them. You know, a lot of people feel differently about this, and I suppose we probably do to some degree have differing opinions on how to move forward with breweries like that. And I want to get into that a little bit.
Yep.
But, you know, I bring that up because Jester King made they were one of the first breweries to make a statement. And it was probably one of the most profound and clear statements about how, you know, we wish them luck and we're friends with them and wish them well, but we're not going to sell their things. We're not going to their events. We can't continue collaboratively brewing just because now the owner of the Wicked Weed Brewery just conducts themselves in a way that they find distasteful, right?
Yeah.
So, and it's something that resonates with me, and I've really been paying keen attention to it, especially on Twitter, a little bit on Facebook, and a couple of the groups that I'm in trying to get a feel for the gist of what both kind of parties are saying. Almost nobody loves the idea, but there are people who are like, look, this is owned by a family. They're nice people. The people that work there, they're not at fault in any way, right? And they're certainly in a town that can penalize you if you don't get in line with the idea of hyper-localism.
Oh, yeah.
But, and there are others who are really upset. There are other, even pretty major beer blogs and bloggers that are straight up hippie militant about not touching anything, and there are lists being made about, all the properties and the brands that they own and to stay the hell away. Honestly, I think my personal opinion is I have never, and we've touched on this. We talked about Terrapin. We've talked about a couple other breweries. Ballast Point, I think, at one point we touched on in previous episodes. As soon as a brewery gets purchased, Lagunitas, Ballast Point, whatever, I stopped buying the products because just the owner of the company exercises the actions with that money that I find anti-craft beer culture, right? The idea of, go ahead, open it.
Yeah.
There you go. So the idea that the money that you pay now for Wicked Weed at the Wicked Weed brew pub that's going to be at half of the airports in the country, that money is going towards, anti-craft beer and local craft beer legislation. It's going towards shelf space wars, and it's going to payola from distributors to force, certain number of handles with their brands on them, or a certain number of, and that means taps in a bar.
Yeah, and incentivize coolers and all these other things.
Yeah. So I'm not comfortable with it. I'm okay if anyone else is. Look, if Wicked Weed, I have no doubt there's talent there. They're still going to be making good beer. 10 Barrel still makes good beer. Goose Island still makes good beer. And that's fine if that's the way you want to roll. I'm not one of those militant hippies. It's all like, no, you can't touch it. It's owned by the man. But at the same time, I have my own rule.
Yeah, I think it's a principles thing. Like, I think, I've gone back and forth for it on it myself because, again, I think it's a principles thing, and you either stand for it or you don't. And that doesn't mean that you don't sway every once in a while and you don't try to figure out, the best way to do it for you. Mm-hmm. But I know that, for me, and I'm looking at some, Bourbon County stouts that I have on my shelf. Mm-hmm. That's kind of like, was kind of like
that's
my,
the man,
it's a little, it's not different, but I try to follow it as much as I can. And whenever I can do it, I try to choose to not support those entities just because, like you said, I know where that money goes. And I feel the same way about, in coffee. I feel the same way about Starbucks, and there are other entities, and we all do this to some degree.
It's in every industry. I don't want to single it out like big beer is bad in a different way.
It's definitely
other big corporations, and it's not that all big corporations are inherently bad. It's just that I've seen how this plays out in this particular industry.
Yeah, exactly.
And it makes me want to go more local, right?
Yeah. I mean, we vote with our dollars, and the reality is that Anheuser-Busch InBev is out to crush all of these smaller breweries. That's why they're buying them. Yeah. They're going to either buy them, or they're going to take them over, or they're going to crush them. They're going to take shelf space away from them. They're going to win to begin.
They're going to win over the locals.
They have countless, endless money. So
not the small locals. I think the small locals who buy in smaller quantities, all the ingredients that maybe the supply chain is controlled to a large degree by, InBev. But I would say that the regionals, the big regionals like a Sweetwater,
yep,
or Stone, some of those brands that have to buy a lot because they actually distribute a lot.
Yeah, New Belgium.
That's gonna hurt. It's gonna hurt them the most.
And we've already seen that. Obviously, last week, a couple of weeks ago, it came out that all those South African hops that a lot of really cool breweries like Modern Times usually use, won't have access to, and Anheuser-Busch blamed it on a smaller crop.
They said the crop share was light, and that they're not going to have enough to distribute. But it's funny, the day I read that, and it was a hubbub on Facebook and Twitter, right?
Everywhere.
It was everywhere. I opened up my Northern Brewer catalog came in the mail.
Owned by Anheuser-Busch.
That I can't seem to shut off.
Yeah, of
right?
course.
As soon as they got bought, I was like, do not send me catalogs anymore. I'm not buying from you anymore. And I opened it up, and on the inside page, a feature for South African hops.
Yep.
There you go. I was like, you sons of no good rotten.
There you go.
There you go.
And that's the way they do it.
So I can get them, but Creature Comforts can't.
Yeah,
Modern
of course,
Times
you're
can't,
buying them from Anheuser-Busch and
sure.
InBev, and
you go direct to the source, I suppose.
So that leads us to the other thing about about that joy of hyperlocal and what you were able to see in Seattle and Ballard and those areas, and why those smaller breweries are so important is because they don't give a rat's butt what's happening in Miller Coors. They're serving their neighborhood beer.
We were on this months ago, by the way. Hyperlocalism.
Yeah.
We were on it months ago.
Yeah.
Way ahead of the curve.
Yeah, think about it. I think about the places that are around Atlanta that are like super hyper local, and the breweries that
what
are
is
around.
this you're serving me?
This is the Bearded Iris double home style.
Double IPA.
Yep. And
soft.
It's
juicy.
It's
mosaic.
Very juicy too.
Very juicy.
Bearded Iris, again, super great brewery in Nashville, but even Nashville is doing the hyper local thing.
It smells like a fresh cut lawn.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but it's juicy.
It is juicy. It's good soft. What do they call that? Mouthfeel?
I think that's one of the only ways that these folks win is either just taking a huge stand and joining against each other like Cigar City and Oscar Blues did. And that was kind of what was so frustrating about what Wicked Weed did is that, if you think about who they had literally in their backyard, right. They had Oscar Blues, they had Sierra Nevada, they had New Belgium. They could have partnered with any of those folks. I mean,
they
can you
could
imagine?
have joined one of those, like, they could have joined forces with one of those companies. And Oscar Blues is an incorporating company, right?
Can you imagine Oscar Blues, Cigar City, and Wicked Weed? They could have crushed it. And they could have easily have done that. Again, they're in their backyard, but they chose not to do that.
They chose not to do that.
And that's the other thing, too, is that they didn't necessarily need the money. I mean, Wicked Weed was funded by the Guthrie Renker, family.
Proactive?
Proactive.
Yeah.
They had
the
buttloads
infomercials
of money.
that run all night?
Exactly.
Yeah.
They had lots of money. It wasn't that
That's how they were able to build it up so fast. It was like 4.5 years.
Exactly.
They built up.
Another new space that they announced.
You don't go into wild fermented beers that young in your brewery life.
Because it's a huge risk.
Right?
I mean, what if they infect?
I know. And you lose all that money. It's gone.
Yep.
That's why you got to establish, like, the old adage was you establish yourself with one flagship solid beer that you can produce consistently. We saw it out of Monday Night. We saw it out of Red Hair. We've seen it out of others in, out west that just say, even Anchor Steam. Like, this is what we make. We got, like, 2 beers.
Yeah, unless you're Modern Times.
Like, forever.
And then you do all these other beers, and then you do an IPA.
And then, that's fine. But you pick a theme and you stick to your style and you perfect it. You build an audience, and then you can start taking risks. You're like, okay, we've got margin for error now. For a wild fermentation to go bad, we can eat that, $10,000 or whatever it costs to get that together, right? Whereas when you're small and young, you're not going to take those risks. Now, one thing about this I wanted to bring up with Wicked Weed is that their wild fermentation expert, their brewer,
has been gone.
Well, he left in December.
Yep, that's right.
It takes months. Corporate buyout takes months.
Yeah.
And you start talking for a couple of months beforehand.
Yeah, I imagine he knew.
All I'm saying is the timing's a little funny.
Yeah.
And there isn't enough conversation about this.
So
that says he's pretty high up in the organization. He's the head brewer. He knows what's going on. And they're like, we're talking to these guys. And he's like, you know what? I'm going to call somebody else and get a conversation started.
So if you don't know what we're talking about, the head of the sour program at Wicked Weed, which is basically the Funkatorium, their whole barrel program, had actually already left to take a job with Brewdog. Those
Moved to
guys
Scotland.
over in Scotland, those guys had asked him to come over there and head up their sour beer program because they don't have one currently.
No.
And he was known as one of the best sour beer makers.
And they're
in the
building in
world.
Ohio too, so they're going to open up in the States big time.
Yep.
So it was a good move.
So he was already gone. And they probably knew that there was going to be a lot of changes anyway. He knew there was going to be a lot of changes anyway, but
Maybe that's why they sold. They were like, we can't keep making these beers.
yeah, maybe they did.
Holy shit, we got to get out of here and just sell off Pernicious and roll.
Yeah. I mean, let's be honest though. I mean, Pernicious was a pretty good.
Pretty good IPA. Pretty good IPA. So did you see some clown got a Kickstarter together to fly a banner over a beer
10
festival? In San Diego, a beer festival that 10 Barrel was hosting, and they wanted to fly up a banner, one of those trail banners behind a Cessna.
Yeah.
That says 10 Barrel is not craft beer.
Yeah,
which is an absolutely stupid idea because they still make good beer. So stop. It's not craft. It depends what you think craft means.
I mean, they're in San Diego. They're opening a new brewery in San Diego, and San Diego is hugely hyper local in terms of their beers and especially IPAs.
Yes.
And so a lot of their local craft beer community are really pissed off about it.
Like if you wanted to fly a banner that says 10 Barrels money goes to fight good beer on the shelves, they don't really have an argument.
Yeah.
Right? But they're still making solid beer, right?
Yep.
If you haven't had their cucumber sour, if you can get one for free, knock yourself out. It's amazing. But here's the challenge with that whole thing is I forgot what I was going to say.
About the airplane. People are donating like $200 a pop.
Right. So what happened was, that was so funny. So what happened was they came out and said, we're going to match that fundraise and just send an equal amount of money to local charities.
Well, come on. I mean, that's like Wicked Weed.
It's a drop in a bucket, like
like
AB
Wicked
InBev.
Weed donating to the foundation for the Funkatorium
Yeah, because
Festival.
InBev donates, let's face it, they donate tens of millions of dollars.
I
over
mean,
the
what's
course of,
$2,000?
$2,000 is
I mean, nothing.
Like, it's nothing.
On that note, though, I don't know if you saw this or not, but so Wicked Weed had to cancel their Funkatorium Invitational.
I did see that. Every brewery but like 3 pulled
Every
out.
brewery, and the 3 that did not cancel were, I should note, were Anheuser-Busch owned. But
Right.
But the interesting thing is
And
that,
they can have that event, by the way.
well, so
They can have a big in-house, all the ABI brands
do
get
that.
together,
They're probably
and
gonna
they
do
can
that
all
anyway.
show each other their
They're gonna
bags
do a
of
family
money.
reunion. But this is something that my buddy Reed Ramsey posted a day ago over on his website, Beer Street Journal. If you follow along, with that.
do. I've been reading it for about 3-4 years.
Yep.
I think when it was really young then. Now it's kind of.
Yeah, Reed Ramsey's a great guy here in Atlanta, but he covers.
I love his writing. I
the
love his
beer.
work.
So he finally announced. He said that he said, here are the details we've been sitting on. That the new festival that is counter to what Wicked Weed was going to put on.
Yeah, some of the other participants got their own festival together.
That's right. It's called the Funk Collective, a gathering of independent brewers. And from what I understand, it's most of the brewers that were going to take part in Wicked Weed's event.
Yes.
They're actually all going to go to Greenville.
Yep.
And do this funk event, which I am absolutely looking forward to. Tickets.
Are you going?
Tickets are released tomorrow, which I'm going to buy tickets for.
$100,
Absolutely.
$200?
Doesn't matter. I'm going.
Doesn't matter.
It really doesn't matter. If it's $100, I'm going.
Did you see who was it that called the sellout breweries zombie breweries? It was one of the more upset craft brewers.
Oh man, that
It
could
slips
be.
my mind right now, but they someone called them zombie breweries, and that kind of stuck with me. So I created some graphics of the Plants vs. Zombies zombie holding like a mug, and then I can change the logo, and they got like a speech bubble, like a comic book speech bubble above their head, so we can just start sharing those online, just like. Anytime there's a promotion for one of those breweries, like, hey, come to our craft beer festival, we can go, Zombie Brewery, we're still craft, and it just, brains. Rock it.
Yeah, exactly.
I'll share those online.
Yeah.
I'll even put out the Photoshop files in layered so people can just use them.
Yeah, lots of folks have been posting about the fact that Wicked Weed's being purchased by Anheuser-Busch InBev, and they're making the jokes about
Who's really
the
pissed?
pernicious Arita and
What's that blog? Beer Dudes? Brew Dudes.
Yeah, Brew Dudes, I think.
They're really upset.
Yeah.
They take it passionately.
So you got to understand.
It was a really good Twitter fight between them and Good Beer Hunting. Now, I like both publications, to be perfectly honest with you, but...
Yeah, so, there is... it's really interesting, the action back and forth on social media around this has been pretty interesting. I will say that it's kind of hard to take some of those sources at face value, especially when they're funded by Anheuser-Busch.
Some of the blogs
ways,
are, yes.
like October, for instance, which is actually funded by Anheuser-Busch, which is interesting because they're doing this kind of craft beer play lifestyle kind of thing, like Good Beer Hunting. And if you don't read Good Beer Hunting, I mean, they put out some amazing articles.
Amazing.
The writing is incredible. Austin Ray, who lives here in the Atlanta area, writes about beer here in Atlanta, is one of their editors. I think he might be the editor there.
He's the editor. And
he's an amazing writer, but they are writing about some of the coolest stories in craft beer, whether it's the guys from Vale Brewing, or whether it's the guys from
we should just do a show where we talk about like all of the beer blogs we read and enjoy, and the podcasts because I actually consume quite a few
plus
beer podcasts.
I like to have Austin in here and join us and just talk about beer with us, and I'd actually like to get his take on it because he's a part of that October thing.
He did that on the Good Beer Hunting podcast, which they kind of use as a behind the scenes, like behind the writing and behind the article, like the things that don't get written, like to make it a little more two-dimensional.
Yeah.
And he did quite a bit of that on that episode. You might want to grab that.
Yeah, I'm gonna do that.
Cue that up right now. Not for this, but for in the car tomorrow morning.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I think that it was really great, and I think that yes, regional brewers are going to be affected by this, probably the most, because they need the most ingredients, right? And they need the most shelf space. They've got the most to lose when it comes to the elasticity of revenue that comes from the challenges at that kind of volume, right? But I also think that brewers have to start self-evaluating with a little more prejudice.
What do you mean self?
I think that there's a lot of things that we accept to hit the shelves and we purchase that is average. I think what an average craft beer or a good craft beer was 20 years ago, 10 years ago, today are all different. So having an also ran citrus IPA, it's not good enough anymore.
Yeah, of course.
Right? So I think that this is going to force these brands having this kind of resources and making really good beer is going to force smaller breweries to find their voice and use creativity and not make an also ran. Not just get into an IPA because you don't make an IPA. Not just like what is your IPA and make it distinct enough to differentiate yourself. Like your product's going to have to differ. Look, the difference between craft beer and macro beer was stark 25, 30 years ago, right?
Yeah.
15 years ago, it was a humongous difference. But today, it's narrower based on those portfolios. And I think differentiation is what made craft craft. Differentiation is what's going to help smaller breweries continue to separate themselves from something and take the risks that a big brewery can't do because they're worried about distribution. They're worried about distance. They're worried about volume.
So on that note, two things. One is that's what made the Wicked Weed buyout so hard was that they were the top of that game. They were the kind of sour darling of the South, right?
Yeah, they had a thing.
They were doing something that no one else in the South was really doing, and if you're and only a few people, a handful of people in the country were doing. If you count like Jester King, DeGard, the brewery.
Yep.
You could say Cascade, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what they were doing, only a handful of people in the U.S. were doing, and that's probably one of the main reasons why it hurt so bad for a lot of people was that, again, they were such a darling. But the other thing
I hadn't thought about it that way.
The other thing is that, because if you think about it, like I wasn't incredibly sad that Lagunitas got bought. I really didn't care. When Terrapin got fully bought by Miller Coors, I really didn't care. When 10 Barrel got bought or Golden Road got bought, I really didn't care. Elysian, I didn't care. But Wicked Weed was on a different level than all of them. And the other thing that I find really interesting about this is that if you think about the crowd and the audience that made Wicked Weed as big as they are, it is the same crowd of people that are bitching and moaning about them being bought. So in a way, they feel betrayed, right? Because they helped them get that big.
That's where I'm coming from, is the betrayal.
Yeah, but the betrayal is real.
It is real. I hadn't thought about it in that they're part of a small fraternity of breweries that are doing a particular type of thing, and that being kind of taken away from me.
Yep.
Like I've lost 1/10 of the available
wild and sour
things
production
in a particular category.
Country, yeah.
But look, and I did have feels about Lagunitas because they were doing some really good stuff out west that was a little bit different back in the day with the Browns and a lot of these things that
brown sugar
that weren't just IPAs, right? So, and when I was really starting to get my sea legs with craft beer, especially West Coast craft beer, a dozen years ago, they were there, right? They were one of the few early comers on the East Coast. But I would say that these breweries, they have an identity, right? They have an identity between their labels and their packaging, their voice and tone that they bring to the market with their advertising and their social media, and they have a flavor profile, right? They have a story. The family, the founders, the people that work there, the distribution, and all of the media that they produce to help create this persona for the brand, right? And we all align ourselves with brands.
Yep.
And the moment a brand that we align with gets bought up by a gigantic corporation that we feel like we're not aligned with, right?
Yeah, of course.
That disappears instantly. It's gone instantly. Now Wicked Weed has no soul.
All right, so
it's gone.
So
poof.
Think about it like this, because I think this is a great analogy. Because you're a Red Sox fan.
Yes.
You lived in the Boston area and
yes.
New England. He's like a huge New England guy. So
we'll get into New England IPAs.
It's just like if your favorite baseball player goes to play for the Yankees.
Yes, it is.
You're like,
you don't do that.
F you. You don't
yes.
exist anymore.
Bye.
I'm sorry. Listen, he may be a great baseball player. He may hit 500 home runs.
No. The second that happens, they're done.
That's what I mean.
Oh, he must be
done. He's still
a
good baseball player. He's still putting out the hits, but he's done.
No, you don't do that.
It's the exact same
You're a
thing.
Braves fan, they go to the Mets.
That's right. It's a loyalty thing, and it's a betrayal of that loyalty, and you feel like you had that loyalty with them, and when they cast off that loyalty, you suddenly cast off yours. So I liken it to that, actually. That's a pretty good analogy.
Well, they also... One of the things in one of our, I don't know if it was our first or second episode, we said, we'll see what happens with these brands as they get bought up. It's not what they say, it's what they do.
Yep.
And what we've seen thus far is that, for the most part, they still continue making the same beer. What they're not doing, what they've shown that they're not doing, is expanding on those beers. They're not coming up with a lot of new flavors. Ballast Point and Goose Island. Ballast Point's a little...
I mean, Ballast Point...
They're not owned by a beer company, but they are definitely...
I wonder how many versions of Dorado there are right now.
Or
Sculpin.
Sculpin, yeah.
There's like... there's
fake tasting pineapple.
There's shaved beard Sculpin now. And
they're not all expanding on flavors the way a new brewery does or a small brewery does. because they see that as an opportunity. They're just more concerned about distribution, and that's fine. But them having more distribution is impossible to be a point of pride for me in my community.
Right. So this happened last week, which I'll cover too. Anheuser-Busch announced an $11 million brewery expansion.
Yeah, I saw that.
Which includes, it says, eyeing growth in expanding craft or specialty beers. And what I read with that is that will allow them to produce 400,000 additional barrels of craft beer and ales that are not currently produced by the brewery. So you're going to see a lot of beers that were previously brewed in Asheville that are going to be brewed in Colorado.
Yeah, well, and you've seen Oscar Blues do this, and other breweries do the Stone. Like, they build coastal breweries so they can make the same beers because the cost of distribution goes down. Like, it's cheaper in the long run to build a new facility. Plus it's on fresher. Another coast, right? And yeah, I mean, there really isn't much of a downside for it. What people fear in, Anheuser-Busch InBev is that they're going to move production away from breweries like they did with Yuengling or
Goose Island.
Like, a lot of Goose Islands strip it out.
Are done in Colorado. Fort Collins, I think.
So they say, you know what? Thanks for your contribution. Sayonara. We're shutting you guys down, and all your shit's going to be made in another city now. Done.
Yeah, and you can imagine if you were...
Stroke of a pen.
If you were an Asheville resident and you had helped to support Wicked Weed all this time.
You've been talking Wicked Weed up. Yeah, we got a lot of good breweries, dude, in Asheville, man. But the one you got to crush is Wicked Weed, bro. Yep.
Now how do you feel about it?
Wah.
Exactly.
Wow.
So, I think that that there's a lot at play here, and it is an incredibly complicated issue. And we've been posting. I know that I've been posting a lot of articles about it. You've been posting a lot of articles about it on your social media.
I'm going to get more harsh about it now that we've talked.
I mean, I stand by. I stand firm in the way I feel. To the best of my ability, I'm going to stand by that and not support purchase beers that
they can't have my money because I know what happens with that money, and it's not all good.
Yep,
half of it goes to bad.
Yep.
I don't want to oversimplify.
Yep,
but I think that's the gist.
I agree. That money is going to sponsor NFL games and to pay for coolers to sell only Anheuser-Busch.
And what is it? The peach pumpkin ale anti-craft beer ad that they were in.
Yeah, which is interesting.
The Super Bowl.
Elysian brews a peach ale.
Yeah.
Weed
turns out that
peach ales.
It turns out that they were making it. That was really funny, actually.
Yeah. So
I tried to burp away from the microphone.
It's a very complicated issue, and in some ways I feel torn because again, like I mentioned, I have friends that work at Terrapin and they're still the same people, right?
They're going to sell more beer. They don't need your money.
They don't need my money.
They're going to sell more beer in Wisconsin because they can go there now.
But if I'm in Wisconsin, you can bet your bottom dollars that I'm drinking a new Belgian, Belgian red.
New Glarus
Belgian
New Glarus,
red.
Yes.
I'm drinking a Serendipity or a Belgian red.
Yeah.
If I'm in Wisconsin, I'll guarantee you.
We should just go on like permanent beer vacations.
I would. Speaking of that,
dude, my beer vacation in Seattle was so amazing. My head hurt after. Like, I'm not gonna lie. I'm not a young man. I consumed that much, but it was a blast. It was a freaking blast.
I'm headed to Austin next weekend.
This is the big announcement.
Headed to Austin next weekend.
The next show will have highlights of
Austin. So my wife and I are headed there for a beer and barbecue trip for our 15th wedding anniversary.
Get to the point.
Going to Jester King.
Yes.
I'm going to Jester King. Next Friday.
Beer Mecca.
4 p.m. Meet me there.
Oh, man.
Looking forward to it. I've never been to Jester King, and I definitely have enjoyed a lot of their beers.
They're doing next level stuff. That's what I'm saying. Like,
I don't think
we're not scrutinizing a run-of-the-mill pale ale enough.
Exactly.
As a community. We're not. We're not forcing these mid-size and small breweries to be more creative.
Well, I mean, because they sell a lot of mediocre beer, and they're totally fine with that.
I'm not buying mediocre
I
beer.
can think of local brewers that do that, and they're totally fine with that because they don't need my money.
No, they're just trying to get to the point where they have enough money to take bigger risks and make cooler beer. I get it.
For
But
the most part.
all right, so that's that. We've covered it. We beat it. It's a dead horse.
Yeah, so I do want to give a shout out, a public shout out to my cousin Brad Shell, who owns Unknown Brewing. Today was a big day for those guys up in Charlotte. He owns Unknown Brewing. They're a pretty good brewer up there, actually.
I'm not familiar with them.
Unknown, they really are a really they're a really good brewer. I don't say that because he's a family member, but today's a huge day in their history in a sense that my cousin Brad Shell, who actually cut his teeth at Sweetwater and then was asked to help open Terrapin, which he did, then went to work at Rogue, and then was the brewmaster at Fish Brewing in Olympia, Washington before.
Jeez, this guy's resume is
before
epic.
opening Unknown Brewing in Charlotte. Today is the day that he passed on the title of head brewer to Christian Wertman, and so now he doesn't have to brew full time, and that's a big deal for them. It's a big deal for Charlotte beer. And
now he can do sales.
He can do all that other stuff.
Shake
that he
hands,
used to
kiss
do.
babies.
He just had a baby, so it's a pretty cool thing. But Unknown is a part of a really thriving craft beer culture up there that includes folks like Noda, Wooden Robot, Unknown. There's just a nice little craft beer mecca happening up in Charlotte. If you haven't heard. So
that's awesome.
Congrats, Brad. You and the team up there. Anytime a brewer gets,
we gotta have him on the show.
Grows, absolutely. Of course, he lives in Charlotte, but
we'll Skype
he did
him
mention
in.
the next time that he was down here that we were going to brew an ale. He and I were going to brew a beer together as a family ale. Which
I'm
I
bringing
thought
it back.
Was pretty cool.
I am bringing it back big in June.
Yeah, bigly.
Bigly. Homebrewing's coming back bigly in my house.
So.
Because the house I had on the market just went under contract.
Nice.
And it's going to sell. And they're closing on the 9th of June.
Congratulations.
Everything I have is sunk into that thing. Everything. So can I do a shout out to my brother Jacob?
Yeah, I would love that actually. This is awesome news.
My brother Jacob got a job.
At where?
Trillium. In
How
Boston.
Awesome is that? In Boston.
Sick.
He got a job at Trillium in Boston.
It's a hot brewery.
Yeah.
And they're doing good work. And I'm excited for the opportunity for him to be exposed to the function.
Yeah.
Right in the whole system.
Kudos to
Because he's an
your
amazing home brewer. He does 1-barrel homebrew systems. He has an automatic, digitally controlled 1-barrel homebrew system. He makes gallons of beer every weekend.
That's crazy.
He can't even give it all away.
Well, I mean, he knows where we're at.
Yeah, shit. I told him I sent him some growler. I'm gonna send him some growler. Send it south, man. And he makes some amazing stuff. He does some stuff that's a little out of the box, some cream ales, and experiments with some flavors that aren't like as trending, which is really cool. Like to kind of counterculture that a little bit. But yeah, I'm excited for him. He starts there in like a week. He accepted the offer, and we'll see what that looks like in June. And what he tells me, I'll probably call him and he'll be like, dude, it's so much work. But, other than that, we can after party.
Bum, 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 after party.
We got intro music.
After party.
Before you were dropping all these rap lyrics before we got started. It was awesome.
She robbed another, and a sister and a brother. Tried to rob a man. It wasn't easy undercover.
I saw
Rick.
Yeah, he's a national treasure.
Yeah, he is.
Yeah, he's a national treasure. You know what? I saw a really bad movie a couple nights ago and I couldn't sleep. This one with like Chevy Chase and Demi Moore and Dan Aykroyd, and Chevy Chase and Demi Moore get stuck in this like weird country castle.
I thought this was Money Pit.
No. And like John Candy's like the sheriff, and they can't leave the house. And Dan Aykroyd's like this old gross guy, like who's like this weird judge in a makeup, and nobody leaves the compound. They all die. It was really weird. and I bring that up because there was a music cameo from Humpty.
Oh, I
The
thought you were going to say
Humpty dance.
cameo. Word up.
No,
Everybody say.
no, a different one-hit
when
wonder.
you hear the call, you got to get
No.
it underway.
What's up? My name is Humpty, pronounced with the umpty.
I once got busy in a Burger King
Yeah, exactly,
bathroom.
exactly. Yeah, I suppose rapping is something we should probably not do.
But I'm pretty good at it,
Much.
actually.
Are you? Let's
I
hear.
am,
Drop the
actually.
beat. I'll do the beatbox.
No, I'm good. And we'll save that for a future one. But yeah, what else you got to open up
I
there?
got a Stone Ripper, the Ripper, as you
Yeah.
would say. I would say Ripper. You would say Ripper.
Yeah, Kelly Ripa.
It's pretty good. And then I've got a trade day from Back 40 Beer Company in Gadsden, Alabama. So if you want dessert, it is a Cuban coffee stout,
Ooh.
which my guess is, and hear me out on this one. This one is a bit of a stretch, but to
I'm
make, this is a fairly new brew. It was bottled 11/29/16, right? 6-month-old bottle. And it is, what's the graph? What's the graph on this? Looking it up, spinning the bottle.
Bum, bum,
Not
bum.
that kind of spin the bottle. Slow your roll. I don't know. The bottle doesn't say the ABVs. The hell is that? We're on the ABV network and we're talking about bottles that don't list the ABV.
That means it must be good.
Does it? It just means liquid trouble. Liquid trouble.
Mix-a-lot's in trouble, begging for a piece of that.
Recommended pairings are ribs and ice cream
bubble.
and
fresh out of.
Alabama oysters. It literally doesn't say the ABV on it unless I'm missing something.
That's terribly sad.
Crack it.
This is a Back 40 brewery. They are in Gadsden,
Gadsden, Alabama.
And yeah, this was bottled in November.
I like a good coffee stout. My whole when were trade routes opened up with Cuba? Obama did that, one of the last things in his administration, right?
Like Obama when
He did that last fall. This was brewed in October and bottled in November, right?
Yep.
So they may have been doing trial batches with illegal Cuban coffee. That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying, I'm just saying.
Yeah.
It's possible.
So
Because they call it the Cuban coffee stout.
The old beer advocate tells me that this is ranked 87 and is 6.2% ABV on this.
6.2. Well, good thing we opened it.
So
87?
87. Yeah, which is very good.
That's very good.
Very good for an Alabama. It pours really thick.
Go home to Millbar,
sticks to the sides pretty well. It's got a nice big frothy head.
Big dark caramel colored head.
Yeah, I like
dark.
it.
Smells of
Coffee,
dark chocolate, dry.
vanilla.
Little vanilla in there, yeah.
Whoa, that's super coffee.
Huge coffee.
Good Lord.
Huge coffee. It's like a carbonated. Is this carbonated cold brew?
Yeah, this is it literally is like a carbonated cold brew. I don't really get very much of like the.
Well, you give it a minute. There's some hops in there. There's a dryness to the finish.
It's like thick malty. It is like a thick. It reminds me of a Whopper. You know those little malt balls.
Oh,
like a Whopper.
I was gonna throw this at you if you were going
Not
Burger
a
King.
Whopper.
Yeah, it's definitely malty, chocolate, coffee. It's thick. It's dense.
Yeah,
You know
but
what?
it's
good. It's
the aftertaste is all cold brew coffee. It says Cuban coffee stout.
There's a tartness to it, like a good cold brew coffee. There's like a.
Yeah.
We probably smacked our lips into the microphone enough, but I would say
it
that
says Coffee Southern Girl, which I'm assuming is a local roaster to that area.
Okay.
Southern Girl Coffee.
So it's Cuban style.
It's Cuban style.
So they weren't
which
actually
is,
brewing with illegal,
which is sugar and
illegally imported
espresso.
coffee. Sugar and espresso.
Yep, and this is says the hops they use Nugget and Willamette. Malts are 2-row roasted barley, C120, and then midnight wheat and chocolate, which you definitely get in the midnight wheel and chocolate malts.
Yes, you do. Because it is dark and thick. It's got a real pillowy mouthfeel, even though the finish is kind of dry.
Yeah, I want to find.
It's not too much though. I mean, if you crack this out on a nice family holiday, like talking about dessert, sit down,
Yeah, Southern Girl Coffee is
hand in your pants, watch football.
They're a coffee roaster in Oxford, Alabama.
Who?
Southern Girl Coffee, which is where they get the coffee from.
Nice.
This beer is in Oxford, Alabama, and they don't do a very good job on Twitter at all. All of their tweets are basically Instagram posts.
Well, luckily this isn't a show that judges Twitter.
No, but it is cool that they did use a local coffee roaster for this coffee. It's pretty good. I mean, honestly, I would say it's
very
a good
good.
87, 88.
Absolutely, this is very good.
80. I mean, I would drink this. This would be a great
anytime.
The other thing that's good about this is that
This is for after dinner. I will crush this after dinner any time.
we're so used to drinking boozy stouts that it's refreshing to drink one that's not barrel aged. I can't even remember the last time I had one that wasn't barrel aged.
Sometimes the barrel aged stouts get a little sweet and taste a little too. Yeah, the wood brings out the booziness and the sweetness a little bit, but I don't know. This is really great. I would crush this in a heartbeat.
Actually, I take that back too because I had
Trade day.
a Cycle Brewing
Trade day.
coffee stout that was not barrel
Back
aged the other
40.
day.
Really?
Yeah, we went to I went to a share on Saturday.
You go to shares, bottle shares, like every day.
I was at a share Saturday, which was a baby shower, and then we had the big share on Sunday.
That's an
And then
interesting
we
theme
turned
for a
around and did
baby
share
shower.
on Monday, which was IPAs.
our baby shower was a bottle share, beer bottle share, craft.
While the ladies were out.
Well, I mean, if you're having a craft baby, it makes perfect sense
the
to
men
have.
wanted to drink their focal. We drank some focal bangers. We drank some headies and some veils and some
What is it?
Treehouse and Trilliums. And
When the hens are away, the foxes.
drink the
Maybe I
beers.
could be. Yeah, I
Yep.
don't know. I don't know exactly how that works, but all right. What else you got? So I'm selling a house. It's done.
Yep.
Work's going great. What else? You got
Man.
feels? You got feels? You're in a good space right now. Last couple of shows, you weren't in a good space.
Yeah, well, I
You
was
weren't
sick.
feeling well. You had a cough.
Yeah, bronchitis.
And now you're kind of
Yeah,
pulling
feel
through.
pretty good.
And now you feel good, so you feel better about. And you got a new job. You got a nice shiny fancy shirt with stars all over it.
New job. Yeah, just got a message today asking about doing an interview with CNBC, which is pretty dope.
You're coming up in the world, man.
mean,
You are coming up.
I-
Coming. Hey, did you see?
For this little guy right here, I've come a long way.
I mean, these things are gonna come to you when you're that big of a badass. That's how that world. When your role is that deep. You know what I'm saying? Know what I'm saying?
Love the beers.
I don't remember what I was gonna say. It's like the third time that happened in this one.
Yeah, so
I'm a clown.
Cantillon, you can buy Cantillon in Georgia now. Shelton Brothers has come back
Oh,
to
for the
Georgia.
local people, that's really
It's
good.
a pretty
Yeah,
big deal.
That is a
Shelton
big
Brothers
deal.
came back to Georgia, and they're actually, for those of you who have heard of the Shelton Brothers Festival, the Shelton Brothers Festival is actually going to be held in Atlanta this year. I think
What?
during the summer, I believe, and it will have the biggest of
It's
bigs.
so hot.
Tickets are not on sale, but a lot of people are already bitching and moaning because it's at the heat of summer in Atlanta. And get over it because I'm going to enjoy it this year.
You know what's happening? You know what I'm gonna do tomorrow? I'm gonna buy tickets to a show.
Yeah, what show?
One of my all-time favorite bands is getting back together to celebrate the 10 or 15-year release.
Cool in the Gang? You've got to slow it down.
It's not Cool in the Gang, dude.
That was El DeBarge.
No,
I think.
Pinback.
Oh, Pinback.
One of my favorite
Yeah,
bands of all time.
Old school hardcore band. Wouldn't you consider that hardcore?
Pinback?
Yeah.
Hardcore? No, it's kind of an indie rock thing.
Oh,
It's a
thinking
mellow
Silverchair.
indie rock. Silverchair. No, they're not scientists.
Silverchair.
Didn't that dude get his doctorate in like biotechnical sciences or something like that?
Oh, that was the Offspring.
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 So I get Offspring and Silverchair mixed up. I
Yeah,
always
the lead singer
cross.
Offchair just got his
Offchair got
his
his
doctorate in molecular
molecular beer
biology
stouts.
to study about AIDS and the
Dude,
crisis, which is ridiculous
so
because
done.
you know what you got to do with music and education. You got to keep them separated. That guy is pretty fly for a white guy.
Oh, shit.
I'm here all night.
And this ship has sailed.
No,
Good
literally,
night, bro.
It's trade day. Back 40. Gadsden,
This
Alabama.
is good. This is really good.
It is a good beer.
Peace. Say goodbye.
Good night, everybody. We'll see.
As always, thank you for listening. You can find us both all over the social medias. Jason on Instagram at Domini Imbibes and on Twitter at Jason Domini. Both on Untapped. You can search our names in there. We also have an email alias now, so sip@lastbeershow.com. No big deal, but if there is someone you think would contribute to an interesting beer conversation, hit us on Twitter, like I said, at The Last Beer Show, or email us sip@lastbeershow.com. Peace.